Texans are, of course, still reeling from this weekend's devastating Guadalupe River flood. And as more time passes, the hope of finding the missing people alive has begun to dim. Details about what went wrong are starting to come to light. And it is clear that Donald and many, many people in the Trump regime made bad decisions or no decisions at all that cost lives that should not have been lost. Last night, CNN dropped a bombshell report that Secretary of Homeland Security, puppy murderer Kristi Noem, waited 3 days after the flooding began to authorize federal aid. Watch this.
So according to 4 officials inside FEMA, that federal response may not have been as fast as it might have been. They say that a new rule that any expenditure over $100,000 needed sign-off from Secretary Noem slowed the federal response. These sources tell us that FEMA's deployment of urban search and rescue teams, which are typically deployed in anticipation they might be needed, instead was delayed until Monday, 3 days after the flood. Now, a source also tells us that a request Texas made for FEMA aerial imagery to aid in the search was also delayed, waiting for Secretary Noem's approval. Now, additionally, multiple FEMA officials say that they were taken aback by the agency's relatively limited response in the immediate aftermath of the disaster. CNN has reached out to FEMA for comment. So far, no reply from the agency. However, a DHS spokeswoman more generally told CNN that FEMA is, in her words, quote, shifting from bloated D.C.-centric dead weight to a lean, deployable disaster force that empowers state actors to provide relief for their citizens.
Well, that doesn't sound like that's working out very well, does it? And if they weren't ready with that plan before this latest catastrophe, then somebody has a lot to answer for. Let's start with Kristi Noem. She gave herself more authority while cosplaying and wasting a lot of taxpayer dollars, and then she botched this completely. The wasted time was crucial, or would have been crucial, to find survivors. Of the 120 known dead so far, how many of those people, including very young children, could have been saved? This is a failure at the federal level, and everybody at DHS, everybody in the White House has blood on their hands. But that's nothing new, is it? So the news dropped just hours after a FEMA council meeting this week, where Noem had the audacity to say that the agency has been, quote, slow to get the resources to Americans in crisis, and that is why this entire agency needs to be eliminated as it exists today and remade into a responsive agency, unquote. The changes she's made have made the agency's responses slower. How does it make an agency more efficient to dismantle it entirely and rebuild it from scratch? It doesn't. It makes no sense at all. Donald, of course, shares Noem's desire to eliminate FEMA because he doesn't believe in wasting money to help people. But the sweeping federal cuts he's already made also played a role in exacerbating the response to the flooding and the failures to warn people about it. As of last month, 600 staffers from the National Weather Service had been laid off or accepted retirement packages. But because the agency had become so unstable, Donald had given the go-ahead for the NWS to hire an additional 126 people around the country. Again, that's because they laid off 600. Meteorologists are being shuffled around the country to fill gaps in the short term in regions most hurt by these cuts. In other words, Donald and his absurd choice to cut staffing at a vital agency, an agency vital to the American people, that's what put the NWS in chaos and cost American lives. This week, we learned that the National Weather Service issued its first flash flood warning on July 4th at 1:14 a.m. 3 hours and 21 minutes later, the first flooding reports came in. That means there was 3 hours and 21 minutes to respond and evacuate people. However, because Doge and Donald Trump cut the job of the person who was in charge of coordinating those efforts, there was nobody to warn the people who were in imminent danger. This concerned citizen posted a TikTok explaining, and as a note, our research has verified all of this information. Take a look.
No weather balloon launches were missed. Forecasts did predict heavy rain. Notifications of flooding were given hours in advance. The issue was that the warnings went out in the middle of the night. Someone has to get the information and act on it. Someone with a job title of, I don't know, how about a warning coordination meteorologist, which is the name of one of the empty positions in the National Weather Service's San Antonio field office. Why is it vacant, you might ask? This position, which, and I quote, is meant to work with local emergency managers to plan for floods, including when and how to warn local residents and help them evacuate. This position has been vacant since April 30th because the person who was in that job took Trump's early retirement package. Now, that's the San Antonio office, which covers a much larger downstream area from where the major flooding occurred. San Angelo office, which covers Kerr County, was missing a senior hydrologist, staff forecaster, and meteorologist in charge.
Because he's Donald and apparently things aren't bad enough as they are, he wants to make them worse. His 2026 budget aims to wipe out entirely the Office of Oceanic and Atmospheric Research, and that is along with every other weather lab and cooperative institute tied to NOAA, which is the National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Administration. That would mean gunning the very agencies that provide life-saving weather forecasts and warnings. Listen, NOAA is not just to provide your local weatherman with the next 10-day forecast. This is a vitally important administration, especially in the context of increasingly devastating and dangerous weather events created by climate change, which again is something that this regime is only interested in making worse. So ask yourself, why? Why would we want to cut funding to agencies that are actually more important than they ever have been? Because, quite frankly, it seems clear that the Trump regime is doing its best to destroy all of the systems that have been put in place to protect the American people. Which leads me to believe something that I've believed all along. They don't care about you. Before we go on, I just want to take a minute to invite you to join our community. Every day here at Mary Trump Media, we work hard to bring you the truth. So please like and share this video. And if you believe in our mission, subscribe to our channel. One of the reasons Texas residents are suffering is because their local leaders also failed to act. As Texans try to recover from this horrific event, which, by the way, it's very difficult to do because it is ongoing, scores of people remain missing. Republicans in the state continue to prove that either they do not understand the problems, they do not know how to problem solve, or, like Donald Trump, they don't care about the citizens of their state. And this is true of all Republicans in Texas, elected Republicans in Texas, from Governor Greg Abbott on down. Let's start with Abbott. His statements about what happened to Camp Mystic have been nothing short of sociopathic. Just days after the flood, he chose, voluntarily, to compare the tragedy to football. And he skirted blame, or attempted to skirt blame, as the death toll continues to rise on his watch. Take a look.
You ask, and I'm going to use your words, who's to blame? Know this. That's the word choice of losers. Let me explain one thing about Texas. And that is, Texas, every square inch of our state cares about football. You could be in Hunt, Texas, Huntsville, Texas, Houston, Texas, any size community, they care about football. High school, Friday night lights, college football, or pro. And know this, every football team makes mistakes. The losing teams are the ones that try to point out who's to blame. The championship teams are the ones that say, don't worry about it, man, we got this. We're going to make sure that we go score again, that we're going to win this game. The way winners talk is not to point fingers. They talk about solutions.
Oh, okay, you fucking monster. Is that how it works? Really? So by not assigning blame, we're going to bring back all the people who died largely because of you? Is that how you become a winner again? Let's put it another way. Who's to blame? What is another way of asking that question? Who's responsible? Whose actions or inactions, whose decision or indecision led to this completely avoidable tragedy that has, quite frankly, been years in the making, but also exacerbated by the utter failure of humanity, of competence, of caring, of the people in charge, all of whom are Republicans. So those are the questions, I imagine, that the parents of the children who lost their lives are asking themselves, and hopefully asking the people in charge, asking the people who are, in the end, responsible. Because if we don't ask the hard questions, which also, quite frankly, are the easy questions, tragedies like this will continue to happen over and over and over again because Republicans refuse to take any responsibility at all, and apparently an alarmingly significant minority of the population refuses to make them. It is only partially Abbott's responsibility, of course, because as we mentioned, this was a failure from the local to the federal level. Texas had an opportunity to install flood warning for the area Camp Mystic was in and chose not to bother. As reported by AP News last night, an array of Texas state and local agencies repeatedly failed to secure roughly $1 million for a project to protect the homes and businesses along the Guadalupe River, known as Flash Flood Alley. The plan would have installed flood monitoring equipment near Camp Mystic and would have cost as much as the county spends on courthouse security every 2 years, a mere 1.5% of its annual budget. I do not want to know how much they spend on their fucking football stadiums. Last week's flood was not the first time this has happened. There was a deadly flood on Memorial Day in 2015 that sparked an initial debate about the flood monitoring system. But the country's largest city, Kerrville, declined to participate in a joint grant application for these alert systems that would have required a $50,000 contribution. $50,000. Was that not worth saving the lives of over 120 people? On top of all of this, Texas's Emergency Management Agency twice denied the county's request for hazard mitigation funding. I want you to listen to Kerrville's County Mayor Joe Herring explaining all of this on MSNBC.
I was born in Kerrville many years ago, and I've seen a lot of floods. And your report is the first time I've heard that the state is going to help us have sirens up and down the river. The truth is, our community, or the county government, looked into that in 2017. And from what I heard, their grant application was denied. So I wasn't in government at that time, but it sounds like we talked about it. We asked for help, and we were denied before.
It's interesting.
Yeah, interesting. That's a word for it. It is unconscionable. Based on this region's history with flooding, based on its geography, based on the elevation, based on the increasingly dangerous effects of climate change, this was predictable. Now, granted, we cannot predict all weather events 100%, but we often know, especially if we have experts in charge of things, long enough in advance to warn people. And the only way to warn people is for there to be systems in place to do that. There are ways to prepare. There are ways to make sure that this kind of thing doesn't happen. This should not have happened. So we cannot undo this unspeakable event. We cannot recover what was lost. We can make sure that it doesn't happen again, but only if we are honest about why it keeps happening. It keeps happening because far too many people aren't paying attention to the fact that those who want you to look away, those who want to convince you that asking those responsible to defend their actions somehow makes you a loser, do not care and are allowed to keep getting away with it.
Please take a second and like and share this video. It'd be awesome if you could subscribe to the channel. If you're listening to us in podcast form, please follow us and give the show a 5-star rating because it really does help other people find our content. Thanks.